Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Primrose Zejebima and I post content about academics, career, and adulting. In today's episode, I'm going to be speaking to you about how to activate and sustain academic discipline. The aim of the video is to encourage you to find ways in which you can fight against procrastination, achieve consistency, and ensure that you meet your targets in terms of your goals in academia. I do think, however, that you can gain insights on how to set targets and meet them within any type of workspace. So if you're not an academic, feel free to watch this video until the end. If you've subscribed, thank you so much. If you've not subscribed, please consider doing so. I encourage you all to like, comment, and share the link to this channel. Alright, so let's get to the business of the day. So I think that we all understand that time is always of the essence, and time waits for nobody. Time will always move, right? That's the one thing that is constant about time, that it always moves. So you need to find ways in which you can maximize your use of time made available to you. Why am I saying this, right? First of all, if you are in academia, perhaps pursuing a degree, you know that you're growing up and you have to increasingly take care of yourself if you're not already doing so yet, right? And also perhaps you're about to become, or you are already a breadwinner or a provider to one person or more. So based on that, you can't afford to spend much of your time as a student, even though when you are pursuing a degree, you are supposed to assume the primary identity of being a student. So make sure that it does not last forever. And then also, time is money, right? You're paying fees towards these studies, or someone or an organization is paying fees towards your studies, and they expect you to finish within a particular time frame, right? Furthermore, universities or institutions also have timeframes that are attached to various programs. So you have to make sure that you also meet those time targets. Otherwise, you may be at risk of, for example, being rusticated or being subjected to academic exclusion. And also, time is money because you are taking away time that would otherwise be spent on gainful work experience or time that you'll be investing, for example, in personal business. So you have to bear that in mind. And if you're a serious person, knowing that and working with that mindset should push you to always set goals and achieve them, right? And then set timelines based on institutions are set because that is the expectation, right? And this should also prove your ability to pursue a degree or a program or a project within given timelines. I often used to hear academics saying that if anything, you pursuing a degree and completing it successfully is a sure sign that you're able to start and complete projects, follow instructions, and work within given timeframes, right? And it also should cultivate in you a culture of, self-discipline in terms of how you work. And so it also means that you are capable of starting and finishing projects successfully. So then how do you start? I think it is always important to write down your challenges whenever you are struggling, right? And seek solutions to those specific challenges. So are your challenges broad in terms of you just struggling to manage all your workload in terms of all the courses that are made available to you? Or is it because of specific courses and specific skills that you may be lacking at that point in time, right? Or maybe you're lacking confidence in that particular area of study or in your whole degree. Sometimes it's because you're rethinking everything. And at which point you should be thinking maybe about pivoting to another field or area, or thinking about how to restart, or thinking about how you may want to quit or take a break completely. However, today I'm not talking about those options. Today I'm speaking about how to sustain, effort and actually finish. So write down your challenges, because if you don't write down your challenges or if you don't define them, then seeking solutions to them is very difficult. You can type it up, you can write it on paper, you can put it up on a board, whatever the case may be, but it should be documented. And then try to identify ways in which you can actually address those particular solutions. So sometimes, for example, if it's linked to writing, you're writing a dissertation or a thesis, It may mean that you need to speak to particular people, perhaps academics, perhaps experts in the field, perhaps people that are experiencing a particular phenomenon that you're going to be studying, right? Maybe you need to go back and read more literature. So is this books? Is this you looking for journal articles? Is this you looking for previous theses and dissertations? Because trust me, those really help. And then we have a wealth of information nowadays. I'm a political science major, right? So much of the information I would have wanted was available, for example, from YouTube videos that were interviews with particular political figures and people in diplomacy. Some of the information would be available from news bulletins. Some of the information would be available if I put myself forward and attended seminars or participated in a webinar. So I just needed to identify where I was likely to get certain types of information. Even Twitter spaces would be helpful depending on the topic you're exploring, or any space, for example, where you actually even get the opportunity to ask questions to people. And then another thing, especially if you're doing your postgraduate studies, put yourself forward. If there's spaces where you're allowed to present your work and speak to peers or to people that are at senior levels within research and writing, present your work, say what it is that you're struggling with so that they can actually help you, perhaps in the right direction. I know some people have reservations regarding presentations because sometimes you may be put on a chopping board, people, giving you harsh criticism, and you don't know how best you can move forward. Also, if you have supervisors or lecturers or course conveners, tutors, teaching assistants, approach those people. Of course, most of them tend to help you to the best of their ability and also based on their availability, but it's worth giving it a try, right? I always say to people, help not sought will never be given, right? Oftentimes, unless if miraculously someone comes to you and they're like, oh, hey, do you want me to help you with anything? But oftentimes you have to seek out that assistance. And then, if you can afford, you may refer yourself to consultants like myself. I'm a research consultant. I've helped a lot of people, doing undergraduate, honors, masters, and PhD studies. So it may be helpful to actually try to reach out to someone, a professional, right? And oftentimes it's ideal to reach out to a professional in your specific area. If your challenge is maybe just general in terms of writing and putting together your work, you can approach an editor in any industry, because sometimes it actually helps to have someone rather who is an outsider helping you with your work. But if you feel like you need an expert's eyes, you may want to look for someone, for example, who's got experience in that particular field of study. All right. So some people often complain about what we call writer's block in academia. And I often found that when I had writer's block, it was because I had fear of moving on. And that happened specifically when I had to write my theoretical framework. I had always struggled with theories from undergraduate level. Of course, I had to engage with theory in my postgraduate studies in terms of my coursework, but I still think that my engagement with it was very minimal, and I was writing assignments to just get specific marks, maybe not distinctions. But then if I wanted my dissertation to be thorough and to be excellent, the theoretical grounding had to be perfect, and I had to develop a conceptual framework, and that conceptual framework had to feed from the theoretical framework. And I also had to make sure that I created a theoretical framework that also linked back to the literature review. So what did I do, right? I would go back to my literature review, identify the key points from that particular chapter, read theoretical literature, and try and find ways in which specific theories would actually answer the same questions that we answered within my literature review, and then think about, okay, what are the key concepts that I'm exploring and how are they best explained by specific theories? However, it took a lot of time. So sometimes if you know that your weaknesses are in a specific area, when you start planning towards your degree, try and cater for that by creating more time for that particular topic. If you're a queen of literature reviewing, give yourself less time in that, and then add more time towards other tasks. But sometimes you never know until you get there, right? You may think that you're excellent at a particular stage and then realize that it's actually not true. So I think the best ways to counter a writer's block, if you ever experience this, is is to write down anything that comes to mind or record yourself. If it's a total mental block, you may want to speak to your supervisor. You may want to read your work as it is now and think about why it is that you have a blockage, right? Consult with a rough idea or an outline of the challenges that you're experiencing or of what you want to articulate but are struggling to articulate. And then I think that the best way to counter writer's block is to actually just write anything that comes to mind. I remember as an undergraduate student, whenever I had to start an essay, I would have like a few words being like empty space, few words, empty space, and like my paper would look empty in most spaces. But then what helped is that I'd actually be able to go and print that out, and then that's where I can sort of like fill in the gaps whilst holding the paper, because maybe my mind was just blocked when I was looking at the screen, but when I get time to think, when I'm elsewhere and I have the paper and I've got it printed, it actually helps. So I'm always committed to rewriting. I think I review any paper that I write at least 10 times. I probably redid parts of my thesis 10 times or more or less, depending on the section. So always commit to rewriting, and committing to rewriting can only happen if you've actually catered for that time already in your planning of your academic project. And also remember, it's within given timelines. So if it's within a semester, if it's within a year, within 3 years, and so forth. So just start knowing that you will revisit the tasks. That gives you less anxiety, right? As opposed to, oh no, I want to write this and finish it, just like that. So people like me, working last minute, starting a paper the day before it's due, I don't know what that feels like, right? That's the kind of pressure I've never entertained. That's the kind of pressure I've never committed to. That's the kind of pressure I think I was personally not designed for, because I don't like giving myself anxiety, and I actually don't work well under that kind of pressure. You were given time, right? You knew when this was supposed to be due. You set your own personal timeline. So what was happening, right? Why didn't you meet it? So personally, that works for me because I actually cater for that head space, that thinking space, that reading time, that time to alternate spaces in which that I'll be working in. So also, I adopted corrections mentality, right? I've committed to rewriting, I've committed to revisiting tasks, and I've adopted a corrections mentality. I actually appreciate growing up and being asked to do corrections whenever we got work wrong, because I grew up knowing that, I can always try and rewrite or rework. And also, I think that rereading, rewriting are types of thinking that are required that can help you to get through various mental blocks. And it helps you to focus on the areas where there's gaps, right? Like I said, I would type up and have gaps in many spaces, or maybe just a subheading, nothing on that section. But then I knew that creating those gaps would actually help me. And make sure that when you get feedback, sometimes if it's very harsh, don't take it too personal. Try and reflect on it, think deeply about what works, what doesn't work for you, and seek the guidance of people that matter the most. If it's a supervisor, if it's a course convener, if it's a tutor or teaching assistant, that is going to be marking your work. Because I think that in academia, that's one recipe for success. Seek guidance from people that matter the most. If you don't have supervisors that avail themselves to you more often, make sure that the few times that you meet with them, you ask a lot of critical and relevant questions. And then I think that if you're procrastinating to do other things, then you're definitely practicing self-sabotage, and you only have yourself to blame. So I fear failing in stagnant mode. I would rather fail forward, not backward, or like when I'm like in a frozen mode. Because I feel like if I fail whilst working, it means that it should be easier for me to trace my steps and identify moments where or when critical errors occurred, and be able to actually rectify them. So you know what? The trick is to always write, always think, document every process, right? Sometimes you may start thinking about something, record yourself. If you're thinking about it in the shower, try and make sure that your memory holds on to it, screw it on, and then once you get out of the shower, right. If it comes to you in a dream, commit to waking up and always have a notebook on the side or something to record with, and then make sure that you've documented that information. Oh yeah, so yes. So how to achieve consistency? Create schedules and stick to them. I'm also speaking to myself here. I'm not a perfect human being. So what I always do is I recognize that life comes with emergencies, and sometimes, this should be catered for. We fall sick. As a woman, I have almost like 1 to 2 weeks and I'm not feeling so well every other month. So life happens, deaths in the family, illnesses, and other, emergencies. Could be you catch COVID, you get a cold, you get an injury from something, so many things. So I always budget my time catering for the likelihood of anything that would set me back or anything that would prevent me from moving forward in a particular way. So for example, I give myself 3 months leeway whenever I've got like 1 year's worth of work, right? So if it's supposed to be done in a period of 12 months, I give myself 15 months to do it, so that if anything happens along the way, I will be able to catch up on it. So sometimes, for example, when I was doing my PhD, I lost time because I started lecturing or becoming a teaching assistant, or I invested more time in my editing business because I actually needed money to survive and continue PhDing. So having that budget where I've got 15 months to do 12 months worth of work actually helped. When I've got 3 months worth of work, I give it 4 months. And so that I've got like 2 months maybe to work, 1 month for emergencies and hiccups, and then 1 month to actually refine everything that I need to do. If it's 2 weeks worth of tasks, I give myself a month so that I've got breathing space, I've got time to commit to side hustles, emergencies, sicknesses, and all of that. If it's a task that should take 3 days, I give myself 7 days. If it's a task that takes 6 hours, I might even give myself 1 day. So I even apply that even in business, right? When someone gives to me work which could probably take 3 days, I tell them this is going to take 3 to 7 days, so that I have ample time to revisit their work. I've got ample time to take care of myself, to do other things, ample time to treat myself if I experience an emergency, and all of that. So I always deliberately make sure that I've budgeted time in that way. So if you are a student, you always get an idea of your deadlines and when exams are and whatnot. So try and work according to that. If things are crammed up, then you have to know what to eliminate during that point in time. You have to know what to seek help with. And personally, I've always lived by myself while pursuing my academic goals. So, I can imagine if I had family, I would probably ask them to handle other tasks and whatnot. Sometimes I don't end up sweeping or cleaning for a specific number of days or hours. I think if I had children, I'd then have to find someone to take care of them and stuff like that. So I think just always make sure that if there are going to be times where pressure is mounting, you also cater for that well ahead of time. And so plan annually, plan monthly, plan weekly, plan daily, plan hourly even, because sometimes you have to check in with yourself every other hour, every other day, see how far you've gone, see how much you've done. And sometimes we underestimate or overestimate what we can do. So it's okay to be honest with yourself, and that's why creating an extended period of time to work within means that you will experience less anxiety. And then we are coming to the end of this sharing, right? I want to speak about the importance of rest and resetting. I understand that times are different in every phase of your studies or any phase of work. I am a serial all-nighter person, but what people don't understand when they assume I don't sleep at night, therefore, I survive on 2 hours of sleep, is that usually if I'm going to work until 6 a.m., it means I'm going to sleep from 6 a.m. to 12 midday or 1 p.m. So I still get that recommended number of hours of rest or sleep, even though there's so many people that argue against sleeping during the day because apparently we were designed to sleep at night. But you know what? I just had to work when I thought that it was the best time. Nighttime was quieter, people are sleeping, And also, if I had housemates or people that lived next to me, they wouldn't be making noise, like, usually during those particular hours. So I had to take that into consideration. Even if it means being on campus, it meant that campus was actually quieter. If I were working in a lab or a library, that was a space that at that time would be occupied by people that are a bit more serious than people who would be in the library or that lab space gossiping during the day. So also knowing when you work best is very vital when you are creating a strategic plan. Some people, of course, are constrained by family setups, amongst other things. Sometimes you're constrained because maybe you're working while studying. So yeah, but make sure that you schedule the required amount of time to rest. If it happens that you pull like a series of all-nighters or like, I don't know, day stretches of working, make sure that you make time perhaps during the middle of that or at the end of that to actually just rest and do nothing that is taxing in terms of intellectually or requiring you to put a lot of effort towards your work. Be mindful about how you schedule showers and baths. You may not have this privilege. I've lived in a context where I had to bath with like 5 liters of water, so I couldn't reset in the context of a bath or a shower. So, or we didn't have the privilege of access to a swimming pool. There's times when I did have access to like a swimming pool in a neighborhood, then I would go there. I'm a fan of self-massaging. Could be using Vicks, could be using Arnica oil, but it just helps you to relax yourself, be in touch with parts of your body, get rid of that tension when you've got upper body pain or like middle, somewhere in the middle or like lower parts of your back. Take naps in between work. It helps me to revitalize myself. Sometimes those naps, are like you're in a semi-conscious, very conscious state where you're thinking or whatnot, but it's fine as long as I just blank out. I would allow myself to that. If the sleep is not coming, I still commit to phones aside, everything aside, but I'm just there napping. My body is at rest. Taking walks really helps as well. Calling your loved ones or people that are relevant to you academically, professionally, or otherwise may be important. If you're in a relationship or friendships, build that intimacy, spend time with those people. If you love the outdoors, aside from walking, you could hike, you could run, you could do photography, visit spaces that are accessible to you depending on your budget and the location. So there's always something that you can do, in between work periods. If it's a walk from one point of campus to the next and then coming back and regrouping and continuing with your work, it is very important, right? And making sure that everything that you do to reset or rest, you set a timeline to it, right? You can't oversleep. Some people can sleep for like 15 hours at a go, but if it's going to be maximum 10, make sure that it's maximum 10 and you're right. I often awaken myself by taking a shower or opening my windows wide open and getting like proper air from outside. Maybe some people feel like it's important to actually go outside. I recently started sometimes waking up at 5 and then going for a run or a walk to like just freshen up for the day, open the mind and everything else. And then also giving yourself rewards is very important. My favorite meal is very cheap. I love sadza mukaka, which is pap and sour milk. If you have enough money to order it, take yourself somewhere, then do that. Watch content that pleases you. Create content. Oftentimes I realize that creating content helps me to actually just relax, refresh, and feel like I'm doing something other than just my intellectual contribution through writing. Take days off where you're just like in bed. Like I take bed days, not bad as in BAD, but bed as in like in bed, like just lying down. Sometimes determine where else to work from. I would alternate between the lab, between the library and offices if I had an office, home, depending on the type of work, and knowing where best to do what kind of work. So for me, for example, the labs are best for when I want to print out content and when I'm typing up my work. Same goes for the library when I'm editing and whatnot. But then I realized that I read better content that is printed when I'm at home, or maybe revise my work that I've printed when I'm at home, when it's a space that is different from the lab or library or an office space. So just know, you learn from doing it, being deliberate about it, and always surround yourself with positive energy. It's so easy to have people always complaining about the dissertation process, about courses, about work, right? I always try and move away from people and also try by myself not to complain or over complain. I'm not saying I don't complain, I actually complain a lot. Academic Twitter helps, academic content on YouTube helps. Engaging with people that are accomplished, or people that still accomplishing multiple goals helps. You're feeding into all of those positive vibes and also feeding towards them. So make sure you also create a positive space for people, in your study groups, in your class groups, in your tutorial groups, whatever it is that you are part of, and make sure that when times are tough, you suspend other business or activities. It's okay to sacrifice from time to time. That's all I can say. And I think only you knows best when to sacrifice what for what. So with those words, I hope that you feel a bit more enlightened on ways in which to activate and sustain academic discipline. And I think that for me, being interested in my work, wanting to finish and move on to the next step, always motivated me. That's all for today. All the best with setting your goals, pursuing your goals, achieving them, and sustaining discipline. Bye.